The sound of jet engines had been the soundtrack to Maya Rodriguez's childhood. Every morning at 6 sharp, she would wake up to the roar of F-16s taking off from the nearby airbase. While other kids complained about the noise, Maya would rush to her bedroom window and watch those metal birds climb into the desert sky like they were going to touch the stars. Her dad, Roberto, had spent 20 years keeping those same jets in the air. He was what they called a crew chief, the guy who made sure every bolt was tight and every system was perfect before any pilot stepped into that cockpit. Roberto's hands were always stained with grease and engine oil, and Maya thought they were the most beautiful hands in the world because they helped planes fly. "One day I'm going to be up there," Maya would tell her dad as they worked together in their garage on weekends. She was only 12, but she could already name every part of an aircraft engine. Roberto would smile and hand her another wrench. "Maybe you will, mija, but first you need to understand what makes them work." Maya learned fast. Really fast. By the time she was 16, she could rebuild a motorcycle engine from scratch. She could listen to a car and tell you exactly what was wrong just from the sound it made. The other kids at school thought she was weird for spending her free time covered in motor oil, but Maya didn't care. She had bigger dreams than anyone could imagine. When Maya turned 18, she made the decision that would change everything. She was going to join the Air Force and become a pilot. Not just any pilot. She wanted to fly the fastest, most advanced fighters in the sky. Her grades were good enough, her physical fitness was perfect, and she had something most other candidates didn't have: a deep understanding of how aircraft actually worked. The day she left for the Air Force Academy was the proudest day of Roberto's life. He hugged his daughter tight at the airport and whispered, "Remember, you already know more about planes than most people ever will. Trust yourself." The academy was nothing like Maya had imagined. Sure, she had expected it to be tough, but she thought her mechanical knowledge would give her an advantage. Instead, she found herself drowning in textbooks full of complex math and physics equations that seemed to have nothing to do with the practical knowledge she had learned in her dad's garage. Her classmates were different too. Most of them came from families with college degrees and had been preparing for this their whole lives. They spoke in technical terms that Maya had never heard before, and they seemed to understand concepts that made her head spin. There was Jennifer from Connecticut, whose father was a commercial airline pilot. There was David from Texas, who had already earned his private pilot's license. And there was Alex from California, who could solve aerodynamics problems in his head while Maya was still trying to figure out which formula to use. Maya tried to keep up. She really did. She studied until 2 in the morning every night, reading the same chapters over and over until her eyes burned. She asked questions in class, but sometimes the instructor would use even more complicated words to explain things, making her feel even more lost. Her classmates were friendly enough, but she could see the looks they gave each other when she struggled with concepts they found easy. The first real wake-up call came during her 3rd week. They were learning about lift and drag forces, the basic principles that keep airplanes in the sky. Maya knew from experience how these forces worked. She had felt them when she rode in small planes with her dad's pilot friends. But when it came to calculating the exact numbers and drawing the diagrams, she was completely lost. Professor Williams handed back their first major test, and Maya's heart sank when she saw the red F at the top of her paper. She had never failed a test in her life. Around her, classmates were comparing their A's and B's, discussing which questions had been tricky. Maya folded her paper quickly and shoved it into her backpack. "Don't worry about it," Jennifer said kindly after class. "The first test is always the hardest. You'll get the hang of it." But Maya could hear the doubt in her voice. Things didn't get better. If anything, they got worse. The coursework became more advanced and Maya fell further behind. She failed her second test, then barely passed the third with a D+. Her flight simulation scores were decent. Her natural understanding of aircraft helped her there, but the academic side was killing her dreams. Maya started spending even more time studying, skipping meals and social activities to try to catch up. She called her dad every week and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "How are things going, mija?" Roberto would ask. "Good, Dad. Really good." Maya would lie. not wanting to disappoint him. But she couldn't hide the truth forever. The academy tracked everything, and Maya's grades were becoming a serious problem. Her advisor, Captain Johnson, called her in for a meeting during her 8th week. "Rodriguez, we need to talk about your academic performance," Captain Johnson said, pulling out a thick folder. "Your flight aptitude scores are actually quite impressive. You have natural instincts that we don't often see, but your test scores in aeronautical engineering and advanced physics are concerning." Maya sat up straight, trying to look confident, even though her stomach was twisting into knots. "I know I can do better, sir. I just need more time to adjust." "Captain." Johnson looked at her with what might have been sympathy. "Maya, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen a lot of talented people come through here. Some are natural academics, some are natural pilots, and very few are both. The question is, what kind of pilot does the Air Force need?" Maya didn't understand what he was getting at, but she had a bad feeling about where this conversation was heading. The modern Air Force needs pilots who can think quickly, solve complex problems under pressure, and understand the advanced technology they're flying. Captain Johnson continued, "These aren't the simple planes your father worked on. Today's fighters are flying computers with weapon systems that require split-second calculations and decisions." Maya wanted to argue, to tell him that she understood planes better than anyone, that she could feel what an aircraft needed just by listening to its engines. But the words wouldn't come. "I'm recommending you for additional academic support," Captain Johnson said. "You'll work with a tutor 3 times a week, and we'll monitor your progress closely. But Maya, I need you to understand something. If your grades don't improve significantly by the end of this semester, we'll need to discuss other career paths within the Air Force." Other career paths. Maya knew what that meant. It meant mechanics. It meant staying on the ground while other people flew the planes she dreamed of piloting. The tutoring helped a little, but not enough. Maya's tutor, a senior cadet named Chris, was patient and smart, but he couldn't bridge the gap between Maya's hands-on knowledge and the theoretical understanding the academy demanded. "You're not stupid," Chris told her after a particularly frustrating session. "You understand this stuff better than most people when you can see it and touch it. But the academy wants you to understand it on paper first." Maya felt like she was trying to learn a foreign language. Every equation, every diagram, every theoretical concept felt disconnected from the real world of aircraft that she knew and loved. She could rebuild an engine blindfolded, but she couldn't calculate the theoretical thrust-to-weight ratio of a hypothetical aircraft. The final blow came during her 10th week. Maya had studied harder than ever for her midterm exam in advanced aerodynamics. She felt like she finally understood some of the concepts, and she walked into the testing room with more confidence than she had felt in weeks. 2 hours later, she walked out knowing she had failed again. The meeting with Colonel Patterson, the academy's director, happened 3 days later. Maya knew what was coming, but she still felt like the ground was falling away beneath her feet when he said the words, "Rodriguez, your academic performance has not met the standards required for continuation in the pilot training program," Colonel Patterson said in a voice that was neither cruel nor kind, just matter of fact. "Your flight aptitude scores show promise, but that's not enough in today's Air Force. We need pilots who excel in all areas." Maya tried to speak, to defend herself, to ask for another chance, but Colonel Patterson held up his hand. "This isn't a reflection of your worth as a person or even as a potential Air Force member," he continued. "You have skills that the Air Force values. Your mechanical knowledge is exceptional, and your understanding of aircraft systems is impressive. Have you considered a career in aircraft maintenance? You could be a crew chief like your father, or even work your way up to become a maintenance officer, just like her father." The words hit Maya like a punch to the stomach. She had nothing against her dad's career. She respected it deeply, but it wasn't her dream. She wanted to fly, not just fix the planes that other people got to pilot. "I understand this is disappointing," Colonel Patterson said, and for a moment his voice softened slightly. "But sometimes the path we think we want isn't the path we're meant to take. The Air Force needs excellent mechanics just as much as it needs pilots." Maya packed her belongings that night in her small dorm room. Her roommate Jennifer tried to be supportive, but Maya could see the relief in her eyes. one less person to compete with for the limited pilot slots. As Maya folded her uniforms and packed her textbooks, she thought about all the times she had imagined herself in a cockpit, soaring through the clouds, defending her country from above. She thought about her dad's proud face when she had been accepted to the academy, and how she would have to tell him that his daughter wasn't good enough to be a pilot. The bus ride home was the longest 12 hours of Maya's life. She stared out the window at the landscape passing by, thinking about how different this trip was supposed to be. She was supposed to come home for Christmas break as a successful cadet, full of stories about flying and training. Instead, she was coming home as a failure, with no idea what to do next. When the bus pulled into the station in her hometown, Maya saw her dad waiting for her. Roberto's face lit up when he saw her, and Maya realized he didn't know yet. He thought she was just coming home for a visit. "Mija," Roberto called out, wrapping her in a big hug. "How's my future pilot doing?" Maya couldn't answer. She just held on to her dad and tried not to cry, knowing that in a few minutes she would have to break his heart along with her own. The conversation with her father was the hardest thing Maya had ever done. They sat in Roberto's old pickup truck outside the bus station for what felt like hours, neither of them saying much at first. Maya had tried to explain what happened, but the words came out all jumbled and broken. "I'm sorry, Dad," Maya finally whispered, staring at her hands. "I know you were proud of me and I let you down." Roberto was quiet for a long moment, then he reached over and lifted Maya's chin so she had to look at him. "Mija, you didn't let anyone down. Sometimes life takes us down a different road than we planned, but that doesn't make us failures." Maya wanted to believe him, but the shame felt like a heavy weight in her chest. For weeks after coming home, she barely left her room. She would lie in bed listening to the jets take off every morning, and instead of feeling inspired like she used to, she felt empty. Those planes were going places she would never go, carrying pilots who had succeeded where she had failed. Her old friends from high school tried to cheer her up. They invited her to parties and movie nights, but Maya couldn't relate to their problems anymore. They worried about college classes and part-time jobs while Maya felt like her entire future had crumbled. She was 21 years old and had no idea what to do with her life. It was Roberto who finally got through to her about 6 weeks after she came home. "Maya, I need help in the shop," he said one morning, knocking on her bedroom door. "Mrs. Chen's car is making a weird noise and I can't figure out what's wrong with it." Maya almost said no. She didn't want to face people, didn't want to answer questions about why she was back home. But something in her dad's voice made her get up and follow him to the garage. The moment Maya heard Mrs. Chen's car running, she knew exactly what the problem was. It was a sound she had heard dozens of times before, a worn bearing in the alternator. The diagnosis took her less than 5 minutes, and fixing it took another hour. "How did you know that so quickly?" Roberto asked, watching his daughter work with tools like they were extensions of her own hands. "I just heard it," Maya said, not really thinking about it. The sound was all wrong. Mrs. Chen was so grateful that she told all her friends about the young woman who had fixed her car when 3 other mechanics couldn't figure out the problem. Within a week, Roberto's small garage had more customers than they had seen in months. At first, Maya helped out just to stay busy. She didn't want to think about her future or make any big decisions. But as weeks turned into months, something started to change. She began to remember why she had always loved working with machines. There was something pure about the relationship between a person and an engine. No complicated theories or textbook formulas, just the simple satisfaction of making something. Broken work again. One day, a man named Tom brought in his small airplane, a little Cessna that he used for weekend flights. The engine was running rough, and Tom was worried it might be dangerous to fly. "I've taken it to 2 different aircraft mechanics," Tom explained to Roberto. "They both said they could fix it, but it's still not running right. Someone told me, 'Your daughter knows about engines?'" Maya was hesitant at first. She had never worked on aircraft engines professionally, even though she understood the principles. But when she listened to the Cessna's engine, she could hear exactly what was wrong. It wasn't one big problem. It was 3 small problems that were working together to make the engine run poorly. She spent the next 2 days carefully working through each issue. She cleaned the fuel injectors, adjusted the timing, and replaced a faulty sensor that the other mechanics had missed. When she finally started the engine, it purred like a contented cat. Tom was amazed. "This is the best my plane has run in 2 years," he said, shaking Maya's hand. "Where did you learn to work on aircraft?" Maya told him about her background, about her time at the academy, and her father's career in the Air Force. Tom listened carefully, then asked a question that surprised her. "Have you ever thought about getting your pilot's license?" Maya felt her heart skip. I tried. It didn't work out." "The military is different from civilian flying," Tom said gently. "It's more about rules and procedures and following orders. Civilian flying is more about understanding your aircraft and trusting your instincts. Someone with your mechanical knowledge would have a huge advantage." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Tom had said. She had always assumed that failing at the academy meant she could never be a pilot. But what if that wasn't true? What if there was another way? Over the next few weeks, more pilots started bringing their planes to Roberto's garage specifically to have Maya work on them. Word spread through the local flying community that there was a young woman who could diagnose aircraft problems better than mechanics with decades of experience. Maya met Lisa Chen during this time, a retired Air Force test pilot who owned a beautiful restored P-51 Mustang from World War II. Lisa had heard about Maya through other pilots and brought her plane in for routine maintenance. "You know," Lisa said, watching Maya work on the Mustang's engine, "I've been flying for 30 years and I've never seen anyone understand aircraft systems the way you do. It's like you can feel what the plane is thinking." Maya looked up from the engine compartment, her hands covered in oil. "I've always been able to hear what's wrong with engines, even when I was a kid." Lisa smiled. "That's a gift. Not everyone has that kind of connection with machines. Have you ever considered getting back into flying?" Maya's face fell. "I tried that already. I'm not smart enough for the complicated stuff." "Who told you that?" Lisa asked, her voice sharp. Maya explained about the academy, about failing the tests, and being told she didn't have what it took to be a pilot in the modern Air Force. Lisa listened quietly, then shook her head. "Maya, the military way isn't the only way to fly. Some of the best pilots I've ever known couldn't pass a written test to save their lives, but they could feel an airplane in ways that textbook pilots never could." Over the following months, Lisa became like a mentor to Maya. She would come by the garage regularly, sometimes bringing maintenance work, but often just to talk. She told Maya stories about her time as a test pilot, about the importance of trusting your instincts in the cockpit, and about how mechanical knowledge was actually a huge advantage for any pilot. "Flying isn't just about following procedures," Lisa would say. "It's about understanding your machine and working with it, not against it. You already have that understanding. You just need to learn how to apply it in the air." Maya started to feel something she hadn't felt since leaving the academy. Hope. Maybe her dream of flying wasn't completely dead. Maybe there was still a way. With her earnings from the garage, Maya began taking civilian flying lessons at the local airport. Her instructor, Captain Rodriguez, no relation, despite the shared name, was a former airline pilot who was impressed by Maya's natural ability. "I've taught a lot of student pilots," Captain Rodriguez told her after her third lesson. "Most of them have to learn to trust the airplane. You already do. It's like you understand what the plane wants to do before it does it." Maya progressed quickly through her training. Her mechanical knowledge gave her an intuitive understanding of how the aircraft responded to different conditions. When other students struggled with concepts like engine management or understanding how weather affected performance, Maya grasped these ideas immediately. But the real breakthrough came when Captain Rodriguez let her handle an emergency simulation. He had secretly pulled the throttle to idle to simulate an engine failure, something that would panic most new pilots. Maya didn't panic. She felt the change in the engine's vibration before she even saw the instruments, and she immediately began the procedures for finding a safe place to land. Her hands moved smoothly and confidently, and she brought the plane down to a perfect emergency landing at a small airstrip. "Where did you learn to do that?" Captain Rodriguez asked, clearly impressed. I don't know, Maya said honestly. I just felt what the plane needed me to do. As Maya's flying skills improved, her confidence began to return. She realized that her time at the academy hadn't been completely wasted. She had learned valuable lessons about discipline and procedure, but more importantly, she had learned that there was more than one way to be a good pilot. Lisa continued to encourage her, sometimes taking Maya up in the P-51 to show her what real flying felt like. "This is what aviation used to be about," Lisa would say as they soared over the desert. "It was about understanding your machine and pushing the limits of what was possible." Maya began to dream again, but this time her dreams were different. She didn't just want to fly military jets anymore. She wanted to understand every type of aircraft, to push the boundaries of what was possible, and maybe even to become a test pilot like Lisa. One day, about 18 months after returning home, Maya received a phone call that would change everything again. It was from a military recruiter, but not the kind of call she expected. "Miss Rodriguez, my name is Colonel Williams from the Air Force Personnel Center. We've been tracking some changes in our pilot training programs, and your name came up in our database as someone who might be interested in a new opportunity." Maya's heart started racing. "What kind of opportunity?" "We're launching a pilot program called Second Chance Initiative. It's designed for people who have the right instincts and abilities but maybe didn't fit the traditional training model. Based on your file and some recommendations we've received, we think you might be exactly what we're looking for." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. After everything that had happened, the Air Force was giving her another chance? "There's just one thing," Colonel Williams continued. "This isn't like regular pilot training. If you're accepted into the program, you'll need to prove yourself by completing some very challenging flight tests. The final test is, well, it's something that's never been attempted before by someone with your background." Maya didn't hesitate. "What do I need to do?" Maya stared at the phone in her hand for a full minute after Colonel Williams hung up. Her father was working under the hood of a car nearby, and she could hear him humming an old song while he worked. Everything felt normal and peaceful in that moment, but Maya knew her life was about to change dramatically again. "Dad," she called out, her voice shaking slightly. "Can you come here for a minute?" Roberto slid out from under the car, wiping his hands on an old rag. One look at Maya's face told him something important had happened. "The Air Force just called," Maya said, still trying to process what she had heard. "They want to give me another chance." Over the next hour, Maya explained everything Colonel Williams had told her about the Second Chance Initiative. It was a new program designed for people who had washed out of traditional pilot training, but showed exceptional potential in other ways. The military had realized they were losing good people because the old system was too rigid. "But here's the crazy part, Dad," Maya said, pacing around the garage. "The final test isn't just flying any plane. They want me to fly an F-22 Raptor." Roberto nearly dropped his wrench. The F-22 was the most advanced fighter jet in the world, a machine that cost more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. "Mija, are you sure you heard that right?" Maya nodded, still hardly believing it herself. "Colonel Williams said it's never been done before. No one has ever gone straight from civilian flying to an F-22. But that's exactly why they want to try it. They think my mechanical background might actually be an advantage with such an advanced aircraft." The next few days were a whirlwind of paperwork, medical exams, and background checks. Maya had to prove that she was still physically and mentally fit for military service, even though she had been out of the system for almost 2 years. But the real preparation hadn't even started yet. Lisa was the first person Maya called with the news. The retired test pilot was quiet for a long moment after Maya explained the situation. "Maya, do you understand what you're attempting?" Lisa finally said. "The F-22 isn't just an airplane, it's like a flying computer with more technology than the space shuttle. Most pilots spend years working up to that level." "I know it sounds impossible," Maya replied, "but Colonel Williams said they've been watching my progress. They know about my work with aircraft engines and they've seen my civilian flight records. They think I might have a unique perspective that could work." Lisa was quiet again. Then Maya heard her chuckle. "You know what? 20 years ago, people said it was impossible for a woman to be a test pilot. Sometimes impossible just means no one has tried the right way yet." The training program was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. Instead of going back to the academy with its classrooms and textbooks, she was sent to a special facility where everything was hands-on and practical. There were only 12 people in her group, all of them washouts from traditional programs who had shown unusual promise in specific areas. Maya's training partner was a guy named Carlos, who had been kicked out of Navy pilot training for being too aggressive, but who could fly aerobatic maneuvers that made experienced pilots dizzy just watching. There was also Patricia, who had failed out of Air Force training because of test anxiety, but who could land an aircraft in weather conditions that would ground most pilots. Their instructor was Major Kelly Thompson, a woman who had flown more different types of aircraft than anyone else in the military. Major Thompson didn't care about textbook knowledge or perfect test scores. She cared about instinct, adaptability, and the ability to think clearly under pressure. Traditional pilot training tries to make everyone the same, Major Thompson told the group on their first day. It teaches you to follow procedures and trust your instruments above everything else. That works for most situations, but sometimes you need pilots who can think outside the box. Maya's first few weeks were spent in flight simulators that were more advanced than anything she had ever seen. These weren't simple computer games. They were exact replicas of real aircraft cockpits that moved and responded just like the real thing. Maya spent hours learning to fly different types of planes, from basic trainers to advanced fighters. What surprised everyone, including Maya herself, was how quickly she adapted to each new aircraft. Her mechanical knowledge meant she understood why each plane behaved differently, and she could feel the subtle changes that meant something was wrong before any warning lights came on. "It's like she's having a conversation with the aircraft," Major Thompson told Colonel Williams during one of their progress meetings. "She doesn't just fly the plane, she works with it." But the real test came when Maya first sat in an F-22 simulator. The cockpit was nothing like the simple planes she had learned to fly. There were dozens of screens showing information about everything from engine performance to radar contacts. The controls were so sensitive that the slightest touch could send the aircraft into a spin. Maya's first attempt was a disaster. She was so overwhelmed by all the information that she crashed the simulated aircraft before even getting off the ground. She tried again and managed to take off, but lost control during a simple turn and crashed again. "This is impossible," Maya said after her 5th crash in a row. "There's too much happening at once." Major Thompson sat down next to her in the simulator. "Maya, you're trying to process all this information with your eyes and your brain. But what made you special with simpler aircraft?" Maya thought about it. "I listened to the engines. I felt what the plane was doing. The F-22 has the same basic principles as every other aircraft you've flown," Major Thompson said. "It just has more ways to tell you what it's thinking. Stop trying to read everything on the screens and start feeling what the plane wants to do." It took 3 more weeks, but gradually Maya began to understand the F-22's personality. Despite all its advanced technology, it was still just an aircraft that wanted to fly. The computers and sensors were like having a conversation with a very smart friend who could tell you everything about what was happening around you. Maya's breakthrough came during a simulated combat mission. She was supposed to intercept enemy aircraft while avoiding surface-to-air missiles, a task that required split-second timing and perfect coordination between pilot and machine. Instead of trying to read all the information on her screens, Maya closed her eyes for a moment and listened. The F-22's engines had a particular sound when they were running at optimal performance. The flight controls had a specific feel when the aircraft was perfectly balanced. Maya could sense when the plane was happy and when something was slightly off, even before the computers registered any problems. She completed the mission flawlessly, not because she had memorized all the procedures, but because she had learned to trust the aircraft and work with it instead of fighting against it. Word of Maya's progress began to spread through the Air Force. The idea that someone could go from civilian pilot to F-22 qualified in just a few months was almost unbelievable. Some people were skeptical, others were curious, and a few were openly opposed to the whole program. Colonel Davidson, Maya's old commander from the academy, was one of the skeptics. He had been transferred to Edwards Air Force Base, where the final test would take place, and he made it clear that he thought the Second Chance Initiative was a waste of time and money. Rodriguez couldn't handle basic aerodynamics classes. Colonel Davidson told anyone who would listen. Now they want to put her in a $150 million aircraft. It's ridiculous. But Maya was too focused on her training to worry about the doubters. Every day brought new challenges and new lessons. She learned to use the F-22's advanced radar systems, practiced air-to-air combat maneuvers, and studied the aircraft's stealth capabilities. The hardest part wasn't the flying. It was the mental pressure. Maya knew that people were watching her, waiting to see if she would succeed or fail spectacularly. Every mistake in the simulator was noted and discussed. Every breakthrough was analyzed and questioned. Lisa visited Maya during the final weeks of training, and she could see the stress her young friend was carrying. "You're putting too much pressure on yourself," Lisa said as they walked around the base. "You're trying to prove that you belong here, but you're forgetting that they chose you for this program. They already believe in you." "But what if I fail?" "Again?" Maya asked. "What if I get in that F-22 and freeze up like I did with those tests at the academy?" Lisa stopped walking and turned to face Maya. "Do you remember the first time you diagnosed an engine problem just by listening to it?" Maya nodded. "Did you have to think about it? Or did you just know?" "I just knew," Maya admitted. "Flying is the same thing for you now," Lisa said. "You've trained enough, studied enough, practiced enough. When you get in that F-22, don't think about proving anything to anyone. Just listen to the aircraft and trust yourself." The night before the final test, Maya couldn't sleep. She walked out to the flight line where the F-22 was parked, surrounded by security guards and maintenance crews preparing it for the next day's flight. The aircraft looked like something from the future, all sharp angles and smooth curves, designed to slip through the air like a knife through water. Maya thought about her journey from that devastating day at the academy to this moment. She thought about all the hours in her father's garage, all the aircraft engines she had rebuilt, all the pilots who had trusted her to keep their planes safe. She thought about Lisa's encouragement and Major Thompson's unconventional training methods. Tomorrow she would either prove that there was more than one way to become a pilot, or she would fail in front of everyone who had believed in her. There was no middle ground, no second place in this competition. But as Maya stood there looking at the F-22, she realized something important. She wasn't the same person who had failed out of the academy 2 years ago. That Maya had been trying to fit into someone else's idea of what a pilot should be. This Maya knew exactly who she was and what she could do. Tomorrow, she would show them all. Maya woke up at 5 in the morning on the day that would change her life forever. She hadn't really slept, just laid in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Outside her window, she could see the first hints of dawn painting the desert sky in soft pink and orange colors. Today was the day she would either prove everyone wrong or confirm their worst fears about her abilities. The base was already buzzing with activity when Maya walked to the mess hall for breakfast. Word had spread about the test flight and people kept staring at her as she passed. Some faces showed curiosity, others showed doubt, and a few showed what might have been encouragement. Maya tried to eat, but her stomach was too nervous to handle much food. She managed a few bites of toast and drank some orange juice, knowing she needed something in her system for the long day ahead. At 7 sharp, Major Thompson met her outside the briefing room. The older woman looked calm and confident, which helped settle Maya's nerves a little. "How are you feeling?" Major Thompson asked as they walked. "Terrified," Maya answered honestly. Major Thompson smiled. "Good. A little fear keeps you sharp. Just remember everything we've practiced and trust your instincts. The F-22 is just another aircraft that wants to fly." The briefing room was packed with more people than Maya had expected. There were Air Force officials, test pilots, engineers, and even some reporters who had been allowed to observe. Maya recognized several faces from her academy days, former classmates who were now qualified pilots, instructors who had taught her classes, and sitting in the front row, Colonel Davidson. Colonel Williams stood up to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we're attempting something that has never been done before. Maya Rodriguez will be flying an F-22 Raptor as part of our Second Chance Initiative program. This test will determine whether alternative pathways to pilot training can be effective for candidates with unique skill sets. Maya tried to focus on the technical briefing about weather conditions, flight paths, and safety procedures, but her mind kept wandering. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, and she knew that many of the people in that room expected her to fail. After the briefing, Maya had 2 hours to prepare. She went through her pre-flight checklist 3 times, even though she had memorized every step weeks ago. She reviewed the flight plan one more time, walked around the F-22 to inspect it personally, and spent time talking with the maintenance crew who had prepared the aircraft. "She's running perfectly," Chief Master Sergeant Rodriguez told her. Another Rodriguez, but no relation. It was a common name in the Air Force. "I've been working on F-22s for 8 years and I've never seen one in better condition." Maya appreciated his confidence, but she also knew that the aircraft's condition was only part of the equation. The real test would be whether she could handle the pressure of flying such an advanced machine while everyone watched and judged her performance. Lisa arrived just as Maya was finishing her equipment check. The retired test pilot had driven all night from her home to be there for the flight. "I wouldn't miss this for anything," Lisa said, giving Maya a quick hug. "You've got this. Just remember, you're not flying for them." She gestured toward the observation building. "You're flying for yourself and for everyone who said it couldn't be done." At 10:30, it was time. Maya walked across the tarmac toward the F-22, feeling like she was moving in slow motion. The aircraft looked even more impressive up close. Sleek, powerful, and slightly intimidating. This wasn't just any plane. This was one of the most advanced pieces of technology ever created. The maintenance crew helped Maya into the cockpit and connected all her equipment. The seat felt different from the simulator, more real, more serious. Maya could feel the weight of the actual aircraft around her, could smell the mixture of fuel and electronics that meant serious flying. As the canopy closed over her head, Maya felt a moment of pure panic. What if she had made a terrible mistake? What if she really wasn't good enough for this? What if she crashed and proved Colonel Davidson right about her? Then she heard the F-22's engine start up, and everything changed. The sound was like music. 2 powerful engines working in perfect harmony, ready to carry her into the sky. Maya closed her eyes and listened, the way she had been taught, the way she had always done with aircraft engines. These engines sounded healthy, eager, ready to fly. "Tower, this is Test Flight 127, requesting permission for takeoff," Maya said, into her radio, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "Test Flight 127, you are cleared for takeoff. Good luck, Rodriguez." Maya taxied to the runway, feeling the F-22 respond to her controls like a well-trained horse responds to an experienced rider. The aircraft wanted to go fast. She could feel that energy in every system. As she lined up on the runway, Maya could see the observation building where dozens of people were watching through windows and binoculars. For a moment, she thought about all of them: the doubters, the supporters, the people who had bet their careers on her success or failure. Then she pushed the throttles forward, and suddenly none of that mattered anymore. The F-22 accelerated, like nothing Maya had ever experienced. Even in the simulator, she hadn't been prepared for the raw power of the real aircraft. Within seconds, she was moving faster than highway speed, and the plane was practically flying itself off the runway. "Wow," Maya breathed as the ground fell away beneath her. The F-22 climbed like it was shot from a cannon, smooth and powerful, and absolutely incredible. For the first few minutes, Maya just focused on getting comfortable with the aircraft. Every control response was exactly what she expected from her simulator training, but amplified. The F-22 was more sensitive, more responsive, more alive than any machine she had ever operated. "Test Flight 127, how are you doing up there?" came Major Thompson's voice through the radio. "Everything feels perfect," Maya replied, and she meant it. Despite all her nerves on the ground, being in the air felt completely natural. "This aircraft is amazing." The test flight plan called for Maya to demonstrate various maneuvers, from basic turns and climbs to more advanced aerobatic sequences. Each task was designed to show that she could handle the F-22's capabilities safely and effectively. "Maya, started with simple maneuvers, getting used to how the aircraft responded at different speeds and altitudes. The F-22 handled like a dream, incredibly responsive but also stable and predictable. Her mechanical knowledge helped her understand exactly what the aircraft was doing and why. As her confidence grew, Maya began attempting more complex maneuvers. She performed rolls and loops that would have been impossible in smaller aircraft, feeling the F-22 slice through the air with precision that was almost artistic. "Outstanding performance so far," came Colonel Williams' voice through the radio. "Proceed to the final phase of the test." The final phase was the most challenging part, a series of high-speed maneuvers that would push both pilot and aircraft to their limits. Maya had practiced these sequences hundreds of times in the simulator, but performing them in the real F-22 was entirely different. She dove toward the desert floor, building up speed until she was moving faster than sound itself. The aircraft was completely stable, but Maya could feel the incredible forces involved. This was flying at a level that very few people ever experienced. Then came the hardest part, a high G turn that would test whether Maya could maintain control while experiencing forces that made her body feel like it weighed hundreds of pounds. In the simulator, this maneuver had made her sick the first few times she tried it. Maya pulled the stick back and felt the F-22 respond instantly. The world tilted and spun as G-forces pressed her deep into her seat, but she kept her focus on the instruments and her feeling for the aircraft's behavior. The F-22 carved through the turn perfectly, exactly as she had planned. "Incredible," she heard someone say over the radio, though she wasn't sure who it was. After completing all the required maneuvers, Maya had one final task: land the F-22 back at Edwards Air Force Base. This was the moment that would make or break the entire test. All the fancy flying in the world wouldn't matter if she couldn't bring the aircraft down safely. As Maya approached the runway, she could see crowds of people gathered near the landing area. Word had spread about the test flight, and it seemed like half the base had come out to watch her land. Maya felt a flutter of nervousness, but then she focused on what Lisa had taught her. Don't fly for the audience, fly for yourself and the aircraft. The F-22 wanted to land safely just as much as she did. The approach felt perfect. Maya could sense the aircraft's speed, altitude, and attitude without even looking at the instruments. She made small adjustments to the throttles and flight controls, working with the F-22 to bring it down smoothly. The landing was so gentle that Maya barely felt the wheels touch the runway. The F-22 rolled to a stop exactly where it was supposed to, and Maya couldn't help but smile as she heard cheering through her headset. "Test Flight 127, outstanding performance," came Colonel Williams' voice. "Welcome back to Edwards." As Maya taxied back to the hangar, she could see people running out to meet the aircraft. The canopy opened, and suddenly she was surrounded by congratulations, handshakes, and even a few tears from people who had believed in her from the beginning. Colonel Davidson was among the crowd, and Maya was surprised when he approached her with what looked like genuine respect. "Rodriguez, I owe you an apology," he said simply. "I was wrong about your potential. That was some of the finest flying I've ever seen from a pilot at any level." But the moment that meant the most to Maya came when she saw her father pushing through the crowd. Roberto had driven all night to be there, not wanting to miss his daughter's moment of triumph. "I'm so proud of you, mija," he said, wrapping her in a hug that smelled like motor oil and home. "You showed them all what I've always known, that you can do anything you set your mind to." Later that evening, after all the debriefings and interviews and paperwork, Maya found herself back at the hangar with Lisa and Major Thompson. The F-22 sat quietly in the background, looking somehow satisfied after its successful flight. "So what happens now?" Maya asked. Major Thompson smiled. "Now you start advanced pilot training, the real kind, designed for people who think differently. You've just proven that there's more than one way to become an exceptional pilot." Maya looked out at the desert sunset, thinking about how much her life had changed since that terrible day at the academy. She had learned that failure wasn't the end of the story. Sometimes it was just the beginning of a better chapter. Her father had been right all those months ago. Sometimes the longest way around really is the shortest way home. Maya had taken a detour through disappointment and self-doubt, but it had led her to exactly where she was meant to be. As the stars began to appear in the desert sky, Maya could hear the sound of jets taking off for night training flights. But now, instead of feeling left out, she felt like she belonged. Soon she would be up there with them, flying, not because someone else thought she should, but because she had proven to herself that she could. The mechanic who had dreamed of flying had finally found her wings.